Have you ever tried to play a game of tennis, but like right as you hit a perfectly good logical shot over the net, your opponent they just catch the ball with their hands?
Oh, yeah. And they just declare a touchdown.
Yes, exactly. They declare a touchdown and just start doing an end zone dance right there on the court.
And you're just, you're standing there on the baseline, racket in hand, look around and see if anyone else saw what just happened.
Right. It's an intensely disorienting feeling.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, you spend the first half of the argument just trying to figure out what universe you're currently operating in, let alone what sport you're playing.
That exact feeling where you realize you aren't even playing the same game, much less following the same rule book that is the anatomy of almost every intense internet argument, you know?
100%.
And today we're doing a deep dive into a masterclass of this exact phenomenon. We have this raw, unedited text exchange between two people locked in a brutal, just highly technical clash over a single photograph of a mountain.
It is a wild ride of an exchange.
It really is. So on one side, we have a user operating under the handle SciManDan, and he's defending the standard globe model of the Earth.
Right.
And on the other side, we have someone going by the Dusty Truth, who is vigorously challenging the globe model from a flat Earth perspective.
Before we go any further, we need to set some ground rules for you, the listener, right out of the gate.
Yeah, please do.
We are putting on our debate analyst hats today.
Strictly analysts.
Strictly. We aren't here to, litigate the shape of the Earth or validate the underlying physics of either model. That's not the point.
Right. Our focus is entirely on the structure of the argument itself.
Exactly. We're going to look at the debate strengths, pinpoint the rhetorical weaknesses, identify exactly where specific rebuttals land, and spot who is deflecting, why they are deflecting, and how they actually pull it off.
So we're essentially doing an autopsy of an internet argument.
I love that framing. Yeah. An autopsy.
Let's jump right into the text logs and look at the opening volleys because the tone is set, instantly.
It really doesn't take long.
No, it doesn't. So SciManDan opens the exchange with what looks like a very quiet, probing question. He asks, and I quote, "Do you know how to work out angular size?"
Which is a highly calculated opening move, if you think about it.
How so?
Well, it's fundamentally Socratic. He isn't walking in and making a grand sweeping claim about gravity or the curvature of the Earth. He's testing the waters.
Like trying to find a starting point.
Exactly. He wants to establish a baseline of shared mathematical understanding. It's an attempt to secure a mutual agreement on a basic physical principle before he actually deploys the trap he's setting.
But the response he gets completely shatters that quiet classroom vibe.
Oh, completely.
The Dusty Truth immediately comes out swinging. The reply is, and again, quoting here, "Boom, you're wrong, buddy. Probably so. Diggity check yourself." And then he just drops a link to a TikTok video.
Talk about a tonal whiplash.
It's incredible. I mean, if we stick with the game analogy, it's like a chess match, right?
Right.
SciMan sits down, thoughtfully adjusts his glasses, and opens with a standard quiet pawn move to e4.
And the Dusty Truth responds by loudly knocking over his own king, shouting, "Checkmate," and demanding SciManDan read a rulebook he just threw across the table.
Exactly. It establishes this incredibly high-friction tone right from the very first keystroke.
And you have to notice the immediate polarization of their strategies there.
Yeah, break that down for me.
So SciManDan is attempting to frame the interaction as a methodical exercise, like let's establish a formula. But the Dusty Truth rejects that framing instantly.
He wants a completely different vibe.
Right. He opts for the arena of a public spectacle. Even though this is just a text exchange between two people, the rhetoric saying things like "diggity check yourself," it implies an audience.
It's performative.
Yes, it's a performative confidence. It's designed to fluster the other person.
So how does a conversation even proceed from there? Because Dusty doesn't just stay in that zone of pure bravado, does he?
No, he doesn't. He shifts gears almost immediately into a demand for highly technical variables.
And that pivot, arguably the most interesting tactical maneuver in this early stage of the deep dive.
I'd agree with that. Dusty follows up that explosion of confidence by challenging SciManDan to provide the actual numbers from the mountain photo they are apparently discussing.
He doesn't just ask for a general idea either. He demands 4 very specific, distinct data points.
He really gets into the weeds.
He does. He says he wants the distances to each peak, the peak elevations, the base elevations, and the observer height.
It is a lot of data.
It is. And then he promises that if he gets these numbers, he will, and I'm quoting again, run both arctan differences and give you the exact angular sizes.
Which sounds incredibly intense.
Right. He finishes by throwing down a gauntlet, basically saying it would be interesting to see if SciManDan's side did it correctly.
If we look at this strictly through the lens of debate tactics, Dusty is executing a strategy of overwhelming precision.
Overwhelming precision, okay.
Yeah, he's using it to seize control of the battlefield.
Walk me through that, because on the surface, asking for data in a science debate seems, well, pretty standard.
It is standard, sure, but the way it's deployed here serves multiple psychological functions.
Like what?
First, it immediately reframes Dusty. 10 seconds ago, he was the guy yelling, "Biggity check yourself."
Right, the internet troll persona.
Exactly. Now, by demanding this multivariable data set and throwing out terms like arctan differences, he is forcibly establishing his intellectual credentials.
He wants to be seen as the expert in the room.
He is demanding to be taken seriously as a rigorously mathematical thinker. And second, it completely flips the dynamic.
Because Dan asked the first question.
Right. SciManDan asked a simple yes or no question, do you know how to work this out? Dusty ignored the question, demanded a massive amount of data, and essentially assigned SciManDan a complex homework project.
Wow. He completely stole the momentum.
Completely.
But wait, let me push back a little on Dusty's intent here. Is this a genuine request for necessary data, or is this just a really sophisticated stalling tactic?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because I see this happen online all the time. To me, it feels a bit like if I invited you to an art gallery to look at a painting.
Okay.
And before you even agree to look at the canvas, you cross your arms and demand I provide you with the exact thread count of the canvas fabric.
Good.
And like the chemical composition of the blue paint and the exact humidity levels of the room on the day it was painted.
Right.
Like on one hand, sure, that is technically data related to the painting, but on the other hand, do you really need the thread count to tell me if it's a picture of a sailboat?
No, you definitely don't.
So is it necessary context or just a clever way to avoid addressing the picture itself?
That's a fantastic analogy because it hits on the exact tension of what we call sea-leaning. Are you familiar with that term?
Vaguely. It's an internet slang term, right?
Yeah.
Like from a comic.
Yes, exactly. Sea-leaning is a trolling or harassment tactic that masquerades as a sincere request for evidence.
Oh, I hate when people do that.
It's infuriating. The person employing it relentlessly demands data, sources, and hyper-specific proof, often feigning complete civility or, in this case, scientific rigor.
And they just keep asking questions.
Exactly.
Right.
The goal isn't actually to learn anything or engage with the evidence. The goal is to exhaust the opponent.
To make them give up.
Right. It forces the other person to do a mountain of tedious work, and if they refuse or make one tiny error, the Sealian claims total victory.
So by demanding the peak elevations, base elevations, and observer height, you're saying Dusty might be sea-leaning.
I'm saying it heavily flirts with that tactic. We have to be fair. In a pure scientific inquiry, asking for base elevations and observer heights is absolutely valid.
You do need those for the math.
You do. To calculate angular size accurately, you absolutely need those numbers. So we have to give him credit there. It's a strong point on its face.
Tactically.
Tactically, as a debate maneuver, it provides a massive defensive shield.
Because if Dan can't find the numbers...
Exactly. If SciManDan cannot immediately provide the exact thread count of this photograph, Dusty gets to claim Dan is unprepared or hiding something.
Without ever having to actually engage with Dan's original point.
Yes. He could win the exchange on a technical procedural foul, basically.
Okay, let's talk about the math he's threatening to unleash because he says he's going to run the arctan differences.
Right.
Before we go further, we cannot leave you, the listener, hanging on the math. What is an arctan difference, and why is he using that specific phrase?
Let's break that down without getting too bogged down in a textbook. Arctan is just short for arctangent.
Okay.
It's an inverse trigonometric function.
You're already losing me. Give me the visual.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay, imagine drawing a right-angled triangle.
Got it.
The bottom horizontal line goes from your eye to the base of a building. The vertical line goes straight up the building to the top.
Okay, simple enough.
The hypotenuse, the longest side, is the line of sight from your eye to the very top of the building.
Got it. Standard right triangle.
The tangent of the angle at your eye is simply the height of the building divided by the distance to the building. It's just a ratio.
Okay, so height over distance.
Right. Arctangent is just working backwards from that. If you know the height and you know the distance, which are the exact numbers, Dusty is demanding the aforgin. You use the arctangent function to figure out exactly what that angle is in degrees.
Oh, I see. So the angle is essentially how much of your vision that building takes up.
Exactly. That's the angular size. So when Dusty says he wants to run the arctan differences, he's saying he wants to calculate the specific angle from the observer's eye to the top of the mountain.
And then do the same for the tower.
Yes, the angle from the eye to the top of the tower in the foreground, and then find the mathematical difference between those two angles.
So throwing out arctan differences is really his way of saying, I know the trigonometry required to dismantle your argument, so bring me the raw data.
Yes, it's intimidating. It's meant to make SciManDan second-guess himself.
So the board is set. The terms have been aggressively laid out. How does SciManDan actually respond to this overwhelming demand for precision?
It's pretty surprising, honestly.
Because if I were him, I would have spent like 3 paragraphs arguing about the TikTok link and the diggity check yourself comment. I would have totally taken the bait.
Most people would. Getting dragged into a meta-argument about tone is the easiest trap to fall into online.
It really is.
But what's remarkable here is SciManDan's restraint. He doesn't rise to the bait of the insults, and he doesn't complain about the homework assignment.
What does he do?
He actually just provides the data.
He just lays his cards on the table.
He really does. He calmly lays down the core geometry of the observation. He tells Dusty, okay, there is a tower and a mountain.
Okay.
The mountain is directly behind the tower in our line of sight. The mountain is 81.47 kilometers away and has a height of 778 meters.
Wow, okay.
And the tower in the foreground is 19.62 kilometers away and is 158 meters tall.
I really want us to help you visualize this because these aren't just abstract numbers on a whiteboard.
No, the scale is massive.
The scale he is talking about is absolutely huge. A tower sitting roughly 20 kilometers away, that's about 12 miles.
Just think about that.
Imagine trying to spot a specific building 12 miles in the distance.
You need a very clear day, for one, and likely a good zoom lens just to make out any real details.
Right, and then directly behind that tower, sitting a whopping 81 kilometers away, that's over 50 miles away, is a mountain nearly 800 meters high.
It's a staggering distance for a photograph.
Think about your own everyday life. When you look down a long, straight highway in the desert or like across a massive valley, things that are incredibly far away look incredibly small.
Of course.
But here we have 2 massive objects, one significantly further away than the other, lined up in a single photographic frame.
And this brings us to the core physics that you're actually arguing about.
Yes. Walk us through the physical mechanics of this. Why does the shape of the Earth change what we see in a photograph of a mountain 50 miles away?
It all comes down to how curvature hides things.
Okay, let's break that down.
Let's imagine the flat Earth model first.
Sure.
If you were standing on a perfectly flat, infinite plane, and you look at a mountain 80 kilometers away, the only thing affecting how that mountain looks to you is perspective.
Meaning it just gets smaller the further away it is.
Exactly. The mountain will look smaller because it's far away. But assuming you have a powerful enough telescope and there's no fog or haze, you will see the entire mountain.
From top to bottom.
Yes, from the absolute base where it touches the ground all the way up to the peak.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. Perspective just shrinks the whole object proportionally.
Now let's switch to the globe model.
Okay, the standard model.
The Earth is a sphere. That means the surface of the Earth is constantly curving downward and away from your line of sight in every direction.
Right.
Over a short distance like a football field, that curvature is completely imperceptible.
You'd never notice it.
But over 81 kilometers,
Yeah.
it becomes highly significant.
Because the Earth is literally bulging up between you and the mountain.
Exactly. If you look straight ahead, the curvature of the Earth acts like a physical hill between you and the distant object.
Oh, wow.
This means the bottom portion of the mountain, and we're talking hundreds of meters of it, depending on your elevation, is physically blocked from your view by the curve of the Earth itself.
So it's like it's sinking below the horizon.
Right. You are only seeing the top portion of the mountain peeking over that curved horizon line.
Okay, so on a flat Earth, you see the whole mountain just shrunk by perspective. On a globe Earth, you only see the top of the mountain because the bottom is hidden behind the curvature.
Yes. Which leads us back to the concept of angular size.
Right, the arctan stuff.
Angular size is simply how large an object appears to your eye based on its actual physical size and its distance from you. Let's do a mechanical analogy that everyone listening can try right now.
Oh, I love these.
Hold your arm out straight and stick your thumb up.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Now imagine looking at the full moon. If you hold your thumb up, your thumb can completely block out the moon.
Right, because my thumb is really close to my eye, and the moon is 250,000 miles away.
Exactly. The moon is vastly larger than your thumb in reality, but because of the massive difference in distance, their angular size, the angle they subtend in your field of vision, is roughly the same.
In fact, my thumb's angular size is probably bigger in that scenario.
It is. So connecting this back to SciManDan's data, we have a tower 20 kilometers away and a mountain 80 kilometers away.
The mountain is physically much taller than the tower.
Much taller. But because the mountain is so much further away, its angular size might be smaller than the tower's angular size.
Depending on whether the Earth is curving and hiding the bottom of it.
Precisely. SciManDan is setting up a math problem to test this exact visual relationship. By calmly providing the real-world numbers, he is establishing a massive debate strength.
He's pulling Dusty into reality.
Yes. He is forcing the argument out of the realm of insults and TikTok links and into concrete, measurable reality. He's saying, here are the pieces on the board, the distances, the heights. These are verifiable facts.
He assumes that by providing the numbers, he's won the initial skirmish.
He really does.
He assumes the numbers can be cleanly applied to the photo. But Dusty doesn't just take the numbers and run the math, does he?
No, he doesn't. He pivots again. And this is where he exploits the difference between physical reality and a 2D image.
Okay, break this down.
Having received the real-world measurements, the Dusty Truth immediately narrows his focus down to the microscopic level of the digital evidence itself.
The actual pixels.
Exactly. He replies with a polite thank you, acknowledging receipt of the numbers, and then just launches into a barrage of questions about pixel rows.
He asks, what pixel row was used for the mountain's base, and what real-world point does that pixel correspond to?
It's incredibly granular.
And then he drops a massive physical complication into the mix. He mentions the Blackpool skyline. He argues that this city skyline in the foreground of the photograph happens to block the view of the actual ground level of the mountain in the background.
This is the absolute meat of Dusty's rebuttal. And as analysts, we have to acknowledge that it is a highly effective, deeply analytical argument.
Even if it feels a bit evasive.
Even then, he is pointing out a fundamental flaw in using two-dimensional photography to measure three-dimensional space when there are obstructions involved.
Let's expand on this obstruction argument, because it's critical to understand why Dusty thinks he has a winning hand here.
It's his trump card.
Let's go back to an analogy. Imagine you are trying to accurately measure your friend's height from all the way across a crowded room.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But your friend is standing behind a very large plush sofa.
Okay.
You can see their torso, you can see their head, but you cannot see their legs or feet at all.
Right, they're hidden.
If you take a picture of them standing behind that sofa, and then you try to measure how many pixels tall they are in that digital picture, your measurement is inherently flawed, right?
Completely.
Because if you can't see their feet, how do you know where their height actually begins? You might assume they are standing barefoot on the floor.
But what if they aren't?
Exactly. What if they are wearing thick construction boots? What if they're standing on a rug? What if there's a step up right behind the sofa that you can't see?
That is exactly the dynamic Dusty is highlighting. That's it perfectly.
So the skyline is the sofa.
Yes. If the Blackpool skyline is the sofa and the distant mountain is your friend, Dusty is arguing that any measurement of the mountain's angular size taken from this specific photo is fatally compromised.
Because you can't see the feet of the mountain.
Right. You aren't measuring the mountain from its true base to its peak. You are just measuring the peak down to wherever the skyline happens to cut it off.
You're measuring the mountain minus the sofa.
Exactly. It is an incomplete data set. And to really drive this point home, Dusty introduces an incredible micro-scale comparison.
I remember this part.
He states that the angle we are debating over subtends to less than half of the diameter of the moon.
Okay, pause. Subtends to less than half the diameter of the moon. What does it mean for an angle to subtend?
Think of your eye as the point of a cone.
Okay.
The lines of sight radiating out from your eye to the top and bottom edges of an object form an angle. That object is said to subtend that angle at your eye.
Okay, so going back to the thumb and the moon.
Right. The moon subtends an angle of about half a degree in our sky.
So when Dusty says the discrepancy they are arguing about is less than half the diameter of the moon, he's saying the visual difference they are looking for in this photograph is smaller than 1/4 of 1 degree.
Yes, it is a razor-thin margin.
It's tiny.
It's almost imperceptible.
And he uses this tiny margin to argue that small miscalculations won't just be an amplification problem, but a proportionality problem.
This is a crucial distinction he makes.
I need an ELI 5 on this. Explain, I'm 5 on the difference between those two things.
Sure. An amplification problem is when you have a small error that just gets bigger the further out you go.
Okay, give me an example.
Imagine you are building a long brick wall, and the very first brick is laid just 1 millimeter off level.
Barely noticeable.
Right. But by the time you get to the end of a 100-foot wall, that 1 millimeter error might have amplified into a 6-inch tilt.
Okay. A mistake that compounds over distance or time.
Yes.
Yeah.
A proportionality problem, which is what Dusty claims is happening here with the photo, is much worse mathematically.
Why is it worse?
Because it means your fundamental ratio is broken from the very start. A key piece of data is completely unknown.
The bottom of the mountain.
Exactly. To find the proportion of the mountain's height, you need to divide the part you see by the whole. But if the bottom is hidden by the skyline, the whole is an unknown variable.
You don't have a starting point to even make an error from.
Right. You aren't building a tilted wall. You're building a wall where you don't even know where the ground is. You are just guessing.
So Dusty is successfully shifting the burden of proof right back onto SciManDan.
Yes, very effectively.
Dan provided the macro numbers, the 80 kilometers, the 700 meters. But Dusty is countering by saying, those macro numbers are completely useless if your micro measurement, the actual pixels you are counting in the photo, is obstructed and therefore imprecise.
He is successfully arguing that a mathematical model is only as good as the raw data you feed into it.
It's a brilliant tactical gray area.
It really is.
Is it moving the goalposts, though?
Well,
Because think about it. At first, he asked for distance, elevation, and observer height. Dan gave him exactly that. Then Dusty says, but what about the pixel rows and the skyline obstruction? I feel like if I were Dan, I'd be shouting, you didn't ask about the skyline.
you could certainly argue he's moving the goalpost by introducing a new hurdle that wasn't in his initial demand. I think that's a fair criticism.
It feels a little slippery.
It does. But from a methodological standpoint, his critique is entirely justified.
How so?
If the instrument of measurement, the photograph itself, is compromised by a physical obstruction, then questioning which pixels represent the true base of the mountain is a valid scientific critique.
It's annoying, but it's valid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It serves a dual purpose.
Yeah.
It is a legitimate concern about data integrity, and it is an incredibly effective debate tactic to stall Dan's momentum.
Which brings us to the climax of this clash.
This is where it gets really good.
Up until now, they've been arguing about the setup. They've been haggling over the thread count and the sofa. Now they are going to argue about the logic of the test itself.
We have two fundamentally different approaches to the concept of proof colliding head-on.
This is where the underlying philosophy of their arguments really gets exposed, doesn't it?
It really does.
So SciManDan drops his core argument, the trap he's been setting since that very first Socratic question. He says, and I'll read this directly from the log, if you start with a flat Earth and just work out the angular size of each night, then the mountain should appear bigger. It's that simple.
He's laying it all out.
And he follows it up with the hammer. If the observation doesn't match, that it's over.
This is a classic textbook application of the scientific principle of falsifiability.
Karl Popper, right.
Yes, the philosopher of science, Karl Popper. Popper argued that you can never truly prove a scientific theory is absolutely true because you just can't test every possible scenario in the universe.
There's always an unknown.
Right. But you can prove a theory is false.
This is the black swan analogy.
Exactly. If my theory is all swans are white, I can look at 10 million white swans, and it doesn't definitively prove my theory because the 10 million in first swan might be black.
Right.
But the moment I see a single black swan, my theory is instantly and definitively dead. It has been falsified.
So SciManDan is using Popper's logic here.
Yes.
He's saying, the flat Earth model makes a very specific mathematical prediction. Based on the distances and heights we just agreed on, a flat plane dictates the mountain must appear larger than the tower in perspective. Therefore, if we look at a photograph in reality, and the mountain does not appear larger than the tower, the flat Earth model is the black swan. It's dead.
It's a binary macroscopic test. He's trying to elevate the debate. He wants to cut through all the noise about pixel rows and skyline obstructions by saying, look at the big picture. The macro prediction fails entirely.
It's the ultimate gotcha logic. It feels so clean.
It does feel clean.
But how does Dusty respond? Because he's been so mathematically rigorous up to this point, you'd think he would attack Dan's formula.
But he doesn't attack the formula. And that is his strongest, most surprising tactical move of the entire exchange.
What does he do?
The Dusty Truth actually agrees with the calculation.
He concedes the math.
He concedes the theoretical math to protect his practical argument.
Wow.
He writes, flat, with the base at sea level, predicts the mountain bigger. That's not in dispute.
So he flat out admits that on a flat Earth, the mountain should look bigger.
Yes. But then he instantly pivots right back to the photograph.
Of course he does.
He says, what's in dispute is whether 60 pixels is actually the mountain's angular size or just the peak to wherever Blackpool's skyline blocks it.
He just refuses to accept the photograph as valid evidence of the failure.
Right.
He says, until you can prove where the base is in the photo, you don't have a mountain measurement. You have a mountain minus unknown obstruction measurement.
Exactly.
And therefore, the flat versus curvature question hasn't actually been tested yet.
Let's pause and look at the strengths and weaknesses of both sides in this exact moment, because this is the fulcrum on which the whole debate balances.
Okay, let's start with SciManDan. What is his weakness here? Because he seems to have the high ground with the whole falsifiability thing.
His weakness is glaring, actually, and it's entirely rhetorical.
Okay.
When confronted with Dusty's very specific logical critique about the skyline obstructing the view, SciMan dismisses it completely out of hand.
Oh, right.
His reply is a blunt one-word shutdown, incorrect. He then adds, the only calculation that is needed is the one based on a flat plane.
Oh, man. I have to actively challenge SciManDan's strategy here. Isn't he being incredibly dogmatic?
He is.
By just saying incorrect to a valid critique of his photographic evidence. Doesn't he just sound like he's sticking his fingers in his ears?
It is a massive error in debate strategy. By refusing to engage with his opponent's concern about the quality of the observation, Dan abandons the scientific high ground entirely.
He looks stubborn.
He does. He allows Dusty to position himself as the one demanding rigorous inquiry, while Dan looks like he's just trying to force a conclusion regardless of the data quality.
It reminds me of a courtroom drama.
Oh, let's hear it.
Imagine a prosecutor who has this watertight, mathematically perfect theory of how a crime was committed based on the exact timing of a getaway car driving from point A to point B.
Okay, I'm with you.
But the only piece of physical evidence that places the defendant in the car is a grainy security camera video from across the street.
Right.
And right as the car drives by, a giant tree branch blows in the wind and completely obscures the license plate in the driver's face.
Just terrible timing.
The defense attorney, acting like Dusty here, stands up and says, "Objection, we can't use this video. The view is obstructed by a tree branch. We cannot verify it's my client driving."
A completely fair objection.
Right. And the prosecutor, acting like Dan, just slams his fist on the table and yells, "Incorrect. The only thing that matters is my theory of the timeline. If the timeline works, the case is closed."
You can't do that.
No.
The jury's going to look at the prosecutor and say, we still can't see the license plate, buddy. Your timeline is great, but your evidence is blocked.
Exactly. Your courtroom analogy perfectly encapsulates why Dusty's strategy is so paralyzing. By agreeing with the theory but aggressively disputing the data collection method, Dusty effectively neutralizes SciManDan's falsification trap.
It's brilliant in a frustrating way. Dan wants a quick binary gotcha moment. Dusty stalls it by saying the gotcha evidence is contaminated.
Which sets up Dusty's final, incredibly dense technical barrage.
He is going all in on attempting to definitively prove why this unverified measurement isn't just a minor issue, but a fatal flaw.
Right, let's unpack this final standoff. Dusty argues that to know the real truth, the, quote, missing bottom of the mountain must be resolved.
Yes.
And then he drops this hyper-specific mathematical claim to back it up. He says that 300 meters subtends an angle of 0.21 degrees.
We need to break this down for you, the listener, because it sounds like total word salad.
Yeah, please do. 0.21 degrees. First of all, visualize a circle. 360 degrees. One single degree is a tiny, tiny sliver of that circle.
Very tiny.
Dusty is talking about 1/5 of one single degree. That is microscopically small.
It is incredibly small. But remember the context. They are arguing about a photograph taken from 80 kilometers away.
Right.
At 80 kilometers, a physical obstruction of 300 meters, which is roughly the height of some very tall city buildings or a significant hill, would block out exactly 0.21 degrees of your vertical vision.
Okay, so Dusty is claiming that the cityscape in the foreground, the Blackpool skyline, is physically large enough to cover up that 0.21 degree angle of the mountain in the background.
Yes, and his conclusion is this. If the obstruction is hiding 0.21 degrees of the mountain, and the total difference in angular size between the flat Earth prediction and the globe Earth prediction is also a tiny fraction of a degree, then the obstruction is mathematically significant enough to ruin the entire test.
He's saying the margin of error caused by the skyline is literally larger than the result you were trying to prove.
Exactly. He is arguing that until you know the exact pixels where the true mountain base begins, the calculation remains permanently unverified. Therefore, you cannot claim to have falsified the flat Earth model.
Wow. So his strategy is to completely paralyze the debate.
That's the goal.
He forces it into a permanent stalemate based entirely on the concept of unverified data. He's essentially saying, if you can't show me the friend's feet behind the sofa, the measurement never happened and your theory hasn't been tested.
It is the ultimate defensive posture. And if we zoom out and connect this to the bigger picture, this raises an incredibly profound question for anyone listening.
Yeah, seriously. Why should we care about this highly technical, borderline absurd squabble over a mountain photo between a globe earther and a flat earther?
Right. Most of us aren't spending our evenings calculating arctan differences.
Definitely not. What does this actually mean for how we operate in the world?
It relates directly to how we consume information, how we form beliefs, and how we argue in our daily lives.
How so?
Think about how often you scroll through your social media feed and you are presented with definitive proof of something.
All the time.
It could be a photograph, a 10-second video clip, a political statistic, or a headline from a scientific study. It's almost always presented exactly like SciManDan's falsification trap.
Look at this piece of evidence. It proves my point unequivocally. The debate is over.
Yes, but how often does that definitive proof actually lack critical context?
Oh, constantly.
Precisely. How often is the metaphorical base of the mountain hidden behind a skyline? The Dusty Truth, regardless of what you think of his underlying cosmological model, is employing a vital critical thinking skill here.
He is interrogating the source material of the claim, not just the claim itself.
He's looking for the tree branch blocking the security camera. He's asking, is this data actually showing what you claim it's showing?
Which is a good thing.
It is. That is a foundational skill in media literacy.
Right.
But, and this is the crucial flip side of that coin, the dark side of this tactic, we also have to be incredibly wary of how that exact same critical thinking skill can be weaponized as a deflection tactic.
This is where we get into the realm of postmodern skepticism.
Exactly.
Postmodern skepticism, what do you mean by that in this context?
I mean, the idea that because no data set is absolutely 100% perfect, no objective truth can be known.
Oh, I see.
If you demand absolute microscopic pixel-perfect perfection in data before you will accept a macro conclusion, you can effectively deny any reality you want.
Yeah. Right. Because you can always find a missing pixel.
Oh, yeah.
You can always find a slightly out of focus frame in the video. You can always find a slight methodological flaw in a massive statistical study.
Exactly. You can always say, well, the exact thread count of the canvas hasn't been verified by a third-party laboratory, so I cannot agree that this is a painting of a sailboat.
It's using the language of rigorous science to completely halt the scientific process.
It's a massive tightrope walk.
It really is. On one side, you have the danger of accepting flawed or obstructed data just because it fits a really neat, logical, theoretical model.
Which is the trap SciManDan flirts with by being so dismissive and just yelling, incorrect,
Yeah.
when his photo is challenged.
Yes, the danger of dogmatism.
But on the other side, you have the danger of weaponizing skepticism to create an endless, impossible stalemate.
Which is the trap Dusty flirts with by demanding impossible pixel-perfect precision from a 50-mile photograph through a city skyline just to avoid admitting his model might be wrong.
That is a perfect synthesis of the dynamic we've unpacked today. SciManDan brought a macroscopic theoretical falsification test to the table. He wanted a clean, binary victory based on big-picture geometry.
He wanted a simple broken or not broken.
Exactly. And the Dusty Truth countered with a microscopic methodological critique of the visual evidence. We saw how demanding extreme precision can be both a valid, necessary scientific endeavor and simultaneously a powerful, impenetrable tool for debate deflection.
It really just brings us full circle back to that opening idea of the tennis match.
They were never really playing the same game.
Not at all. Dan was trying to play a game of macroscopic geometry and logical falsification. Dusty forced him into a game of microscopic photographic forensics and endless data verification.
And in any debate, whoever controls the rules of the game usually controls the outcome. If you let your opponent dictate the terms of verification, you've already lost.
Which leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought for you to mull over as you go about your day.
Always good to leave on a high note.
We've spent this time analyzing how powerful the demand for perfect data can be in dismantling an opponent's argument. We've seen how easy it is to find a skyline obstructing the view.
Right.
But think about this in the context of your own life and your own beliefs. In a world where literally every piece of data, every photograph, every study can be endlessly scrutinized for minor microscopic flaws like a few missing pixels or an obstructed view. At what point does healthy skepticism cross the line?
It's a fine line.
At what point does it stop being critical thinking and start becoming an excuse to ignore the bigger picture entirely?
Yeah.
Think about your own deeply held beliefs, whatever they might be. If you were presented with a macro-level observation that totally contradicted them, how much missing data or margin of error would it take for you to throw that observation out?
It's a very uncomfortable question to sit with. We all like to think we are perfectly objective, that we are driven purely by the data.
But are we?
But often, if we were really honest with ourselves, we let our preferred rules dictate which data we even allow on the board in the first place.
It's just like going to the doctor for a medical x-ray. We all want the clean, jagged white line that tells us exactly what's broken so we know how to fix it.
Exactly.
But sometimes there are shadows on the film, there's a blur from the machine, there's a skyline in the way.
And the real debate isn't about what the X-ray shows.
No, it's about who gets to decide what those shadows actually mean.